Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Hello, welcome to the show. So we'll jump right in like I usually like to do. And we're talking about knowing the difference whether you're listening or following along with your ego or with your truth. This can be tricky because your ego knows you really well. You know, it's your mind-made self. It's who you think you are. It's your identity, what you're identified with. You know, just the idea of anything temporal, just the idea that you are a man or you're a woman or you have brown hair or what race you are or who your parents are or what your name is or what you've done for work or what your experiences have been. That's all part of your egoic identity. You know, so it's like most things. It's not bad. It just is. It just is. You know, it's the ego gets a bad rap, I think, because it's misunderstood. The ego gets a bad rap, I think, because most people are not in control of their ego. Their ego is in control of them. They're completely identified with their mind-made self. They're not really identified with their eternal self, with their soul, with what they truly are. Outside of that temporal experiential identity, we're not really connected to that. So therefore, everything that the ego says, we think we're saying it. You know, if we hear this inner voice telling us, to think a certain way, we think it's us wanting to think a certain way. And it's not. It's our ego trying to protect us. You know, and that's the other reason I think that, a lot of misunderstandings come from, there's a lot of this fight your ego. You have to kill your ego and die off, kill off your ego and all this stuff. And it's not about that. It's about not letting it control you. You know, we've been given lots of tools in this life. Some of them are a brain, emotions, an ego, and they all serve purposes. They all serve us, our eternal us, the real us. They serve us well, and they perform jobs and help when they're not in control. But when our ego is in control or our emotions are in control and we're not in control of them, it's a problem because they're non-thinking entities. They're not good at making proper decisions. It's because it's not their job, I would argue to say that they can't make decisions. Emotions can make decisions, but they make horrible ones. Your ego, well, I guess if you believe it, you can perceive it as making decisions. So, the way that I usually explain it to clients is it's like a motion detector. It's like a warning system. That's what our ego was originally for. It was to say, hey, watch out for this. There might be danger over here. And then we go, what? It captures our attention out of nowhere and says, hey, watch out. So then we can put our attention on it and go, what? And we can use our brain. We can use, we can center ourselves and get information, from divine wisdom or however you want to phrase that, to make a decision on what to do. But the problem with the ego being in control all the time is, it says, hey, there's a problem, because that's kind of how it talks now, because we're not in control of it. So it doesn't say, hey, there might be a problem. It says, hey, problem. And for the most part, I mean, I think this aspect is partially because of our society, or the way that we've gone. I don't know if it was always like this, but it's usually looking for the negative. It can sometimes look for the positive too, as long as it creates separation. But I don't think that many people get caught up with that often, because we kind of catch it. One thing that humans have been good at, how do I phrase this? They've been good at watching out for this, but they don't fully understand it because we don't go deep enough. So they make mistakes in it. But it's kind of been demonized in society to think that you're better than everybody, for the most part. I mean, some people still do it, but and then they and I'm talking in a negative, egoic way, comparison way. That's when it's ego. I'll get into that more later. But when you're better than somebody else at something and that makes you feel good, then that's ego. So most often in society, that's been demonized. A lot of times in normal society, people don't do that. You can get these highly successful people sometimes that just wear it like a badge of honor, which, I mean, to some degree is kind of more honest than most of the people running around doing it behind the scenes, right? At least they're owning it, but it's pure ego. If we think we are better than other people, it's just ego. It's not actually true. It's just we're all different. Like some people are supposed to be better at something than other people. That doesn't make you a better person than them. Nobody's a better person than somebody else. It's just different, not better. I'm a better singer, so I'm amazing, and you're not, so you suck. Well, no, like, yes, you are a better singer, but I'm better at other things. Like not thinking I'm better than other people. So yeah, as far as so we don't fall down that trap that much, is my point, where we're going, oh, I'm better than everybody, So, but what we're looking, our ego is usually looking for negative. It's not usually looking for the positive. It depending on the circumstances, still can do that, but it's usually looking for the negative. So a good way to understand it is like, it's like a motion detector. It's like if you have a light that, a motion detector light outside your house, and it goes off, you don't run away and panic, right? What you do is you look out the window and then you go, oh, is there danger here? It's like, well, no, it was just a rabbit hopping across the lawn. It's nothing. Oh, okay. You sit back down and relax. But if, there's 20 men running across your lawn with guns, well, that's a problem, So then you would react accordingly to that situation, which I have no idea what accordingly is, but it's different than thinking it's a bunny rabbit. So, my point is just when it goes off, we don't believe that it's a problem automatically. Why? Because the light doesn't have this decision-making capabilities. It just warns us. That's how our ego is. So when our ego goes off, which is basically its job, it's, to oversimplify its job, it's basically to look out for problems. Because if you have a system that's created to keep you safe, which is what your ego is for, would you have it look out for things that bring you happiness, or would you have it look out for things that could be a problem? If its purpose is to keep you safe, you're going to program it to look for stuff that could be problems, right? So that's usually what it's doing, looking for problems. So the problem is we believe that, so it just goes, hey, this person's trying to take advantage of you. And we believe it. Oh my God, this person's trying to take advantage of me. No, it's that was just your ego giving you a warning. Hey, watch out. This person might be trying to take advantage of you. But since we're so identified with it, we think that they're actually trying to take advantage of us. Like, look, this is why we don't trust our neighbors anymore, I think. We don't associate with them to get them to know them, to get to know them enough where we trust them. Instead, we trust government agencies that have been lying to us forever. Anywho, so that's the overview of our ego. And one of the ways that I was thinking about something this morning, and one of the things I was thinking about was like how this is just a different way of phrasing the show title, basically. When it first came to me, it's like, how do you know when you're doing something from the goodness of your heart, or when you're using, or when it's ego driven, and because I think that this is a big problem right now. There are a lot of people right now with beautiful, loving hearts that are being driven by their ego, and they don't see it as their ego, because what they want is love based, right? So then they're like, no, I want good things. I want love. So therefore it's not my ego, it's my true self. And it's like, well, that doesn't necessarily, just because what you want is good in your perception doesn't mean that it's not ego driven. It's not, that's not the litmus test for if something's ego driven or if it's not ego driven. And really, whether it's ego driven is the biggest question, because who are we individually to determine what's right and what's wrong for everybody else on the planet? Like, because our way is love based, therefore we have the right to condemn and control other people. It's still condemning and controlling. It's like that's not love, right? So what, like how I was seeing this initially, it was through judgment. This kind of popped in. I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain it correctly, but this concept popped in, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, so right. And how can you tell? And the first thing that came is, if you're judging somebody else because they're not doing what you think is right, then that's ego driven all the time, every time, 100% of the time. If you're judging somebody else, because it's not, if you're judging somebody else, it's ego driven, period, because it's not your job to judge somebody else. And it's ego driven because it's not inclusive. Like, the ego is seeking to separate. Our true self understands that we are all one. Like, that's a foundational concept of our true self. This is why when we're connected to our true self, we can't judge other people. This is why you can't get into an argument with somebody who's fully present. If somebody is fully present and by proxy truly connected to their truth in that moment, and you try to argue with them, they won't argue with you, because they're going to give you the right to have your perspective, and they're not going to try to change that. They're going to accept the fact that you have that opinion at this particular time, and that's just reality. So they're not going to try to fight against it. And most often, if you're trying to fight about it and trying to argue about it, that means not most likely, that means you are ego driven, right? And if somebody is present, then they're going to recognize that you're being ego driven. And if you're being ego driven, then they're not having a conversation with your truth. So if they're not having a conversation with your truth, and they recognize it as ego, which they will if they're truly standing in their truth, then there's no point in arguing. And they'll know that. Just like, okay, well, I see you feel very strongly about this. You have the right to your opinion. And, arguments don't solve anything. Discussions and conversations can. So somebody that's in their truth could have a conversation possibly with somebody that is ego-based, just to explain things. But if not an argument, they won't argue with you, because when somebody is arguing, they're trying to prove their point, right? They're not open-minded. They're not interested in hearing your point. They're trying to prove their point. That's the point of an argument. If people were interested in hearing and understanding the opposing side and finding out whether that person might be right or not, it wouldn't be an argument. It would be a discussion. So I'm talking about if there's an argument, if somebody is in that energy where they're not interested in hearing what you have to say, they're just trying to get to sway you into thinking like them, and that's ego driven. So you go, okay. And somebody that's present is going to give them that. Be like, okay, I understand you feel that way. So you can't argue with them. Our truth does not try to manipulate how other people think. And really, that's what we're doing. We have this righteousness, because when we're talking about love-based things, and really, it's hypocritical. And, just to be clear, I'm not perfect. I don't know if you guys knew this. Sometimes I catch myself doing this, but it doesn't mean that I don't have insight into it, and I don't try to stop it, and I can't share my perspective. So all I'm doing here is I'm trying to share perspectives from the things that I notice, that I try to implement, to try to expose other people to it so they can think about it and see if they're doing this unknowingly. Because our awareness, that's really what it's all about. This is why I do this podcast. It's just about awareness. I'm not trying to change the way people think, because I know that everybody's an individual and they're going to think the way they want to think. And sometimes you can be, I've been on this spiritual path 20 years, man. I've experienced a lot of stuff. There's been plenty of times where I've been exposed to information and I haven't been capable of grasping it yet. For probably one of the first time, when I was trying to get sober, it happened then, like before I even woke up spiritually. I was exposed to things and people were saying things, and there was a part of me that said, I don't know, man, maybe there's something to something that these people are saying. It kind of seems like there might be, maybe, but I don't understand it. I don't know what they're talking about. It's Greek to me. So I've been in that situation before, and then all of a sudden, things started making sense as I started having my spiritual awakenings / shift of perceptions. So, and then later on, really, I think the first main teacher I dove into was Eckhart Tolle, Through the Power of Now. And I listened to those CDs, years ago, I think like 7 or 8 times in a row. And the first time through, I didn't understand half of what he was talking about. But the stuff that I did understand, I was blown away by. So I kept listening and, implementing to the best of my ability. And then by the time I was, after I had listened several times through, I was like, oh my God, I get all of this. Like every single thing that he says, I understand it, and I understand why it's true. I understand it intellectually. I understand it conceptually. I still had to implement it physically to make it part of me, but it was, so I've heard things that just I wasn't ready for, is my point, so like sometimes we're just not ready. And that's fine too. I can't control that. It's not just with spiritual work, like I've used this example before, like potty training, a boy especially, is usually hard, so it's like you try to explain it to them in all these ways and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden one day they just do it on their own. They're all set. It's no longer an issue. And you're like, huh? Like, I've been working at this forever. What finally switched? I don't know. I just decided. Oh my God. So it's like, and we see that through our children in several different ways. So sometimes we're just not ready. We're just not capable of hearing it. But awareness is our biggest asset. Once we become aware of something, then we can change it. Because prior to like I tell people, that's 75% of the work right there, is just understanding that you have a problem and what it is. That's 3/4 of it, because you can live 20, 30, 40, 60, 80 years without even understanding that you have a problem with something. And all those years, you don't have a snowball's chance in hell of fixing it. You don't, because you don't even know it's a problem. How can you fix it if you don't even understand that you have a problem with it? Right? So awareness is huge. This is a lot of why I do this podcast. I know some people are going to listen to some of them and they're going to go, oh, and some people are going to listen to them and go, eh, and some people are going to listen to it and go, oh, hell no. And that's all fine. It's all normal reactions depending on where that person is. It's okay. I thought Tolle was completely wrong about certain things. I would have put money on it. Same thing with my sponsor. Same thing with every other spiritual teacher I've ever followed or had or listened to. There's things that they've said that I literally would have put money down and said, there is no way that this is true. And then later on in my journey, found out that it was truth. So like now, I'm not like that anymore. I don't hold on to things so tightly, like I know everything. Well, it doesn't make sense to me right now, but who knows? Maybe someday it will. That's how I stay open. Right? So a lot of this podcast is just getting you to be exposed to something and planting that seed. And whenever it, if you decide to open up that seed and get it growing, then cool. If it starts opening up on its own in the future, cool. Whatever. We're all different. There's no judgment, right? That's what I'm talking about right now. It's like, as soon as there's judgment, and judgment is, it's not assessment, it's judgment. Assessment is, oh, they think that this way is correct. Huh. Well, from my perspective, it's not correct. And I have my reasonings, but they have the right to their opinion. It's none of my business. That's, assessing is understanding that people have different thought forms than you, which if we were doing that in our society, most of the problems that we see externally, like the problems that we see externally are symptoms. They are not the problem. Okay. So the problem is much deeper underneath. So most of the problems that we see in society is because of judgment, like all the anger and hatred in the world. That is just ego-based judgment. It's not assessing. Judgment is saying, assessment is saying, oh, they think that way. Okay, well, I disagree with them. I think this way, but I understand that they think that way. And that's just a reality. And you can actually take action from that place. Okay. You can, and I would say that this is how true social change takes place, because I mean, if I can't count how many times I've talked about this, but if you look at Gandhi, if you look at Nelson Mandela, if you look at MLK Jr., at the foundational principles about how the change actually took place, it was through conversations with their perceived oppressor on an equal level. It wasn't yelling at them. It wasn't arguing with them. It wasn't fighting with them. It was laying all that aggression down and actually having conversations with them, discussing things, exchanging ideas back and forth without judgment, without saying, you're bad because you do this. They're just going, okay, well, I just want to explain our perspective. That's all. And you can explain your perspective to me. And then maybe we could come up with a solution. And then they have conversations like human beings. And that's how progress is made, through mutual respect, even though there's a foundational disagreement. Because you pull the judgment out, and it's just assessment. You think like this, I think like this. Let's discuss it. I mean, I don't want anything wrong. I'm not trying to hurt you. I just want equal rights for me and my people, just like you want equal rights for you and your people. It's fine. We can all have what we want. And when you have conversations like that, then solutions come up. But that just doesn't, it's not happening. We're not learning from our history where there was success. The fact that like billions of people look up to those three people that I've mentioned is not an accident. Like, there have been people who have successfully, how can I phrase this to differentiate it? Successfully, temporarily negotiated certain things, or manipulated or forced people to the other side to do something that was good through aggression or forcefulness, right? They've done it. And people don't really celebrate those people. Not like there's not a day named after them. They're not, as loved and revered as these people were. These people were loved and revered and gone down in history as some of the most incredible people that ever set foot on the planet. And why? It's because of what they did and how they did it. So it's, the reason I kind of went down that path a little bit is I want to make it clear. I'm not saying that we just sit around and don't do anything. That's what the ego says. As soon as I start showing the difference between the ego and the true self, then the ego jumps in and says, oh yeah, so what you're saying, Glenn, is that like I'm supposed to sit on my butt and do nothing and just let the bad people run the world. So no, that's actually not what I'm saying at all. Actually saying the opposite. What I'm saying is that if you connect to your true self and you let go of the hatred and you let go of the judgment and you let go of the ego-driven path that you think you're so self-righteous on, if you let go of all that stuff and you land into your true self and you let that guide you, you're going to be a billion times more productive. Because that's love energy. That's real love energy, not fake love energy, not manipulation, anger, and control masked in this wrapping paper of love because you're a good person. That's not what it is. Truth is pure love, pure love. Nothing is stronger in the universe than that. That's how real change takes place. This is why I don't get into a lot of the external stuff, because I know that the most good I can do is functioning from my truth in every way, shape, and form as much as humanly possible. And the better I get at that, the more I can act from it. And honestly, just for comparison's sake, or so you guys understand me, I guess, or and possibly yourselves, the reason that I'm not out in social causes in ways more than giving this podcast is because I'm not capable of it, quite honestly. Like, if I were to jump into the political system right now and start like getting really involved in the middle of it and trying to navigate, I couldn't stay grounded. I mean, with the viciousness and the attacks coming at me every possible direction, and my previous life, there's no way I could stay grounded enough to do that. I personally don't think that that's my path this lifetime. Who knows? I'm going to keep working on myself. And maybe at some point that would make sense. Right now, I don't see that happening, but I am open to the possibility. Right now, my job is to explain this type of stuff to all of us, because it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if, just because I'm not capable of jumping into the political system, it doesn't mean that the work that I'm doing isn't helping change the world for betterment. Because if I do it and you do it, it's Gandhi, be the change you wish to see. So I'm being the change that I wish to see. And if we each were the change we wished to see, instead of pointing the finger and judging everybody else, well, then what we would do is we as a collective would be more grounded in truth, and this type of stuff wouldn't be flying. There's a collective energy field that's made up of all of us here on Earth. So the more of us that were actually grounded in our own truth and authenticity, that would dramatically shift what's acceptable in society. Right now, like this is the problem, is through our judgment, we're busy pointing the finger at all these people that represent all the problems in society, when really they're a perfect reflection of us. We are, as a collective, we are the ones that character assassinate everybody. We are the ones that rationalize our behavior. We are the ones that cut corners. We are the ones that are not connected to our own truth. We're the ones that are judgmental. We're the ones that are selfish and looking out for ourselves all the time. We as a society are like that. That is the collective vibration of our society. That's why what's transpiring in the higher up levels is reflecting that back to us. If you had a group of people that were spiritually grounded, that occupied a particular country, and their government attempted a 16th of what our government does, the people would stand up and say no. They'd just be like, no, this isn't going to happen. No. And it would be effortless. Just be like they'd just be like, so hey everybody, what do you think? Like, let's just not go to work tomorrow or buy anything, and we'll just do that for a little while. Yeah, okay. And then a majority of people would do it, or a whole ton, enough to affect the society and the economy. And they might do it for a few days, few weeks, maybe even a few months, who knows? But they would just do it, and the government would cave, and then we'd have our country back. It'd be real easy. Panama just did it. You know, not necessarily. I think truth can come through suffering, right? So, my understanding conceptually of why Panama was able to just do it was because they, generations ago, that they lost the Panama Canal. That their biggest geographical miracle of their country, and they sold the rights away. And that really deeply affected people for generations, So now they're going to sell all their mineral rights to some huge company in Canada. And, and it was already done. It wasn't like they were going to, they did it. And the people just went, oh, hell no. No, you're not. Like, this is going to impact our country geologically, and we're not having it. And they stood up as a country. They came together, and they were offered, what I read, they were offered, I believe it was a 75% increase in their retirement. Everybody that was already collecting retirement and everybody that was going to retire, because they're like, we're going to make so much money off of this. We're going to increase your retirement by 75%. And you know what the people said? No. How's that for integrity? No, you can't buy us. No, you can't buy our homes, the land that we're on. No. That's simple. No. Oh, I love it. I love it. So, if you are feeling animosity towards the other side, your ego is driving you. Period. Every time. Your true self, your truth, doesn't feel animosity for others, even if you're in disagreement. Why? Because it understands that it's just a part of you. We all have it inside of us. We all have it within us to be selfish. We all have it within us to be self-centered. So instead of judging somebody else, what we can do, a lot of times we look at that as far as our shadow selves, right? Most people have heard of doing shadow work. Well, our shadow work, I think from a distance, if you don't really understand shadow work, people have a misconception of what it is. I know I did. And when I really dove into it, it's not the bad parts of ourselves. It's parts of ourselves that we didn't integrate. It's parts of ourselves that we shame and try to stuff down. Like a big shift I had was my anger. I had worked on it for many years and made all kinds of ground on it. But then when I looked at it from a shadow perspective, I was like, oh my God, my anger was my biggest asset when I was younger. I mean, it was my solution to a situation that was out of control. I was getting bullied and beat up and all this stuff going on, and I couldn't control it. So, and I went to the adults, and none of them could give me an answer, So, and a few of them, the only answer they could give me, and I understand why now, was, punch the biggest one in the head and don't stop until you're pulled off. Now, I didn't want to do that. I was a kind-hearted kid. Like to push me to that point, to push myself to that point was the hardest thing I ever did, I think. Really. I mean, even looking back, well, getting sober was difficult. But it was one of the most difficult things that I needed to do, was to really get myself to believe that there was no other options and that I had to act violently. I hated the very thought of it. It didn't make any sense to me. There was a part of me that knew that that wasn't the answer, but it was the only one I could find. So once I got pushed to that point and found that, once I went deep enough into my, whatever, that blackness, that darkness, that deep within us, that pit of rage, once I finally accessed that and made myself go there, it was horrible. I hated doing it, but I knew no other way. So it served me really, really well in many, many situations. In fact, I'm sure it probably saved my life several times. Now, was it the best solution? No, it wasn't. But it was the only one I could find at that time. And it served me really well for many years. So when I look at that and I go, okay, well, thank you. I understand why I adopted you as part of my person, like why I brought you up so I could access you, and why I needed to intensify it to deal with my circumstances. But I'm older now. I'm not a little kid dealing with bullies, so I don't need to do that anymore. But instead of saying like, so anger, stay down, you're bad, I don't want you to ever come up, and trying to control it like that and push it down, even if it wanted to come up, that's shadow work. That is a part of myself that I thought was bad that isn't bad. Sometimes anger serves us in extreme situations, so it's not bad. It just is. It's how you use it, right? So once I accepted it and I thanked it for serving me when I was younger and saying, I understand that you're part of me, but my life is different and I'm choosing different tools now. If I need to use you, I know you're there, and that's kind of comforting, quite honestly. I know it's there. It's in all of us. So all of us have anger within us. And if we go, well, yeah, we're supposed to have anger inside of us. Sometimes we need it. Oh, sorry about that. My mind bell went off. I thought I had muted this thing. Apparently I didn't. Now I did. So once I accepted it, instead of pushing it down, saying, don't come up, you're bad. If you come up, that's bad. Instead, I went, oh, okay, you're part of me. Thank you for being part of me. Thank you for doing what you did. I don't really think I'll need you much anymore, but I understand that you're part of me, and I welcome you to be part of me. That's fine. You're not a negative. In certain situations, you're a huge positive, so thank you for being part of me. I appreciate you being here. And once I integrated it like that, what I noticed was, since I wasn't resisting it and trying to push down, that saying, whatever we resist persists, since I wasn't resisting it and trying to push it down, instead of it coming up kind of out of control and taking me over in situations, not that really happened that much, but sometimes it would control me, like internally. Like I get, like I wouldn't lash out at other people in society, but inside I would be enraged, right? So instead of it coming up like that, what I noticed is it would come up and it'd be like, Glenn, I'm here. Do you need me? It was kind of like that instead. And I'd be like, what? Like, who are you? Oh, I'm angered. You want me to come up and kick some ass? And I'd be like, oh, no, that's cool. Thank you. I'm going to handle it in a different way. Thanks for being there, though. Thanks for offering, but I'm going to handle it in a different way. And it'd go, oh, okay. And it'd chill back out because I wasn't resisting it. I had accepted it and integrated it as part of myself. And like we do that with everything. Like all these, so understanding what we perceive as negative aspects, like we all have them in us. And if we did our own inner work by integrating this stuff, and instead of judging other people and going like, oh, they're selfish, going like, oh, where am I selfish? And usually we'll go, like, this is deep work. You can't go, where am I selfish? Oh, I'm not selfish. And we stay focused on the way that particular person's selfish, and we don't look in other ways where we could be selfish, right? We're all selfish in certain ways. We live life from our perspective. It's pretty difficult not to be in certain situations, right? So we all can work on that. And then sometimes, like, I'll use honesty as an example, because I've done a lot of work on that, being honest, not lying in any way, shape, or form, not even white lies. So like when I see dishonesty being projected at me or reflected back to me, and I go, well, I'm not dishonest, so I don't understand why this dishonesty keeps showing up. The other thing that we can do is we can go in and accept that dishonesty is part of us. We have the ability to be dishonest. We're doing it with ourselves. That's why I'm doing this podcast. I mean, we're all dishonest with ourselves to some degree. If we're standing on that soapbox thinking we're righteous and we're functioning from love and the other side is bad, you're lying to yourself. That's dishonesty. You're rationalizing your own behavior, rationalizing your anger, pretending that it's justified because you're a loving, wonderful person and this person is bad, and you don't have any bad inside of you, or they're the problem, not you're the problem. Like, you don't have any control over them. Even if it were true, you can't change them, but you can change you. So, and one of the ways that we can do this is collectively by going in and saying, okay, let me try to heal my dishonesty. Let me try to heal my anger. Let me try to heal my frustrations. Let me heal. It's all work is self-work. And that affects the collective. Like I said, I'm not saying that you can't do other things. Like, I don't like the term fight for what you think is right. I like feed, because I believe everything is energy. And I think fighting means you're fighting against something. Like, how do you fight with something? Right? You fight against something. So I don't like the word fight, because if you're focused on the problem, then you're not feeding the solution. You got to pick one. So you can feed the solution from this positive part to try to induce social change, but you got to be in the right energy to do that. You can't be fighting against something and think that that's going to induce positive change. Fighting against something just expands the problem. Whatever you're fighting against will grow because it's energy. And you want proof? Look at everything that we fought against. We've had wars. We fought for peace. Do you see peace? No, you can't fight for peace. That's like screwing for virginity. You can't put one energy out and get another one back. The opposite back. Like, it doesn't work that way. We declare everything we declare war on. War implies fighting against. So we declared the war on drugs in the United States. And what did that do? It expanded the problem, right? War on poverty. What did that do? It expanded poverty. Whenever we declare war on something, it expands the problem, right? So this is why I'm saying we have to stop fighting against what we don't like and start feeding what we do out of authenticity and truth and love. And when we do that, we will win. And we have examples in human history where that's happened. So really study those people, study what they did if you want to make a positive impact in this world. So hopefully that helps. I'm going to just scan some notes here real quick to see if there's anything else I want to touch on. Yeah, I most of these notes are kind of surfacey, so I'll just kind of touch on them. I'm not going to go into them because I think the way this podcast went, it went deeper underneath things to really understand it energetically, hopefully, but surfacey little kind of things to keep in mind to catch it when it's your ego, that can be helpful as well. So that's why I'll touch on some of this stuff. It's the, I've explained this a lot. It's like your ego speaks very quickly and reactive, and it's often fear driven, where our true self is very quiet, grounded, calm, compassionate. Ego is concerned with what other people think. True self is more concerned with who I really am. True self is based in integrity, even when it's uncomfortable. Like when you see a problem in others and you can recognize it in yourself, we don't want to. Our ego doesn't want to. Our ego doesn't like that. So we just rationalize or push it away. Whereas the true self goes, ooh, I think I just found something out about myself. I need to take this deeper. Like it because there's no judgment. We don't judge ourselves when we're connected to truth either. We don't judge other people, but we don't judge ourselves either. So when we find something that is an uncomfortable truth about ourselves, we hold it dear, like it's important and wonderful and a good thing, even though it feels uncomfortable. Where our ego just tries to go fast and push it out and rationalize or make excuses for. Yeah, the feelings in our body, the ego, tension, constriction, pressure, urgency to push, because urgency makes us go too fast. Oh, we got to do it now. No, you don't understand. It's no. That's ego, because there is no time in the spiritual realm. So our true self knows if something needs to happen now, we will automatically take action in a calm way. We will not feel that urgency. You got to do this now. You can't put up with this. That's ego. Truth is, okay, just say this now or do this now in a very calm way, because acting in a particular moment is appropriate sometimes, and we'll know that, but it won't be manic, it won't be pressured, it won't be urgent, it'll still be calm. We'll just find ourselves doing it right then. That's the difference. And ego doesn't like change. It wants to stay in control of what it's familiar with, right? And our true self is more concerned with our evolution. It knows that change is inevitable and we're supposed to be changing. So it embraces that change. It likes seeing things in different perspectives, even when it's uncomfortable, like I was saying before. So yeah. So those are important. I think those hopefully will be helpful. But that'll do it. I'm going to wrap up with that. So thank you guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And if I can be of service, let me know. Peace.